Let us pray. O God, our help in ages past, our hope for years to come, in response to your convocation, we offer this invocation in the mode of the organ processional music. Now thank we all our God, with hearts and hands and voices and minds. At the beginning of this new academic year, at the beginning of this new chapter in life, we pause to remember those who have made it possible for us to be here. As we embark upon this journey of research, study, service, and learning in this place of beauty and higher education, may we honor the sages of the past by leveraging knowledge of the past for the present and future common good of humanity. Prepare us to be surprised in mind and heart, inside and outside the classroom, that we may be moved toward wholeness through lessons learned, imaginations ignited, insights sparked, challenges encountered, dreams envisioned, and friendships made. On this educational expedition, may we even encounter strangers who become lifelong friends and colleagues for human companionship on the way. Let the newness we experience today lead us to a deeper sense of gratitude for every good gift, including this university, even as we work toward and hope for a world full of peace, love, and justice, that all whom we encounter while journeying here would give thanks for us. Amen.
Please be seated. Today marks the formal beginning of your time at Duke, but I love yesterday even more. You started it apart, and you ended it together on East Campus. Over 500 members of the Duke community volunteered for move-in and showed you the spirit of cooperation and enthusiasm that's such a defining attribute of the Duke experience. And from what I saw, your parents handled that traumatic occasion with almost as much maturity and grace as you did. Each year, I have the privilege of presenting the entering class to the president and to the faculty at Convocation. You represent the final culmination of the most selective admissions process in our history. We received almost 32,000 applications for admission, and each of you was selected in a process that was careful and personal and individual. The admission staff thought about you, they read about you, and they advocated for you. And for each of you, for every one of you, we asked ourselves, does this person have something meaningful to offer the Duke community? And for each and every one of you, the answer was absolutely yes. You're bringing to Duke an incredible variety of perspectives and experiences. You come from over 50 countries and from 49 different states, just like last year. In fact, last year, I pleaded with your predecessors to find someone from Montana for this year, which they did. In fact, we have more than one student from Montana, but somehow they seem to forget about North Dakota. So now I have to ask you, please, if you meet a high school student this year visiting from North Dakota, please encourage him or her to come to Duke. But don't forget Montana. Right? Any way you look at it, you are a far-flung group. In fact, we have as many students here from Singapore as from Atlanta, as many from San Diego and Las Vegas as from Chicago and Arlington. We have an equal number from Istanbul and Austin. There are as many of you from Sydney as from Syosset, as many from Palo Alto and Phoenix as from Baltimore and Orlando. In fact, there are as many of you from Anchorage and Savannah and Harare as from Wellesley and La Jolla and Reston. You've traveled here from Ankara, from Boise, from Hanoi and Johannesburg, from Kill Devil Hills, from Laramie, from Las Cruces, from Princeton, and from Providenciales, from Rome, New York, Rome, Georgia, Rome, Italy, and from Tamaqua and Tracy and Tupelo and Yuma. And like last year, you felt free to tweet on your journey here. "I just want it to be tomorrow," you tweeted. "See you later, Boston. It's been real, Jersey." "Goodbye, Spartanburg." And probably a lot of you could have tweeted this: "Just ready to be out of here. Take me to Durham." And then when you got here, you tweeted some more. "New chapter in life," you tweeted. Hashtag after Starbucks. 5:18 a.m. 2 Duke 1984s dropping off 1 Duke 2017 tuba player who is too happy to care. "Moved in and ready for an amazing year," you said. "Dreams really can come true," you tweeted, and followed that by, "But too bad I'm back being a freshman." You gave pithy advice, such as, "Don't try to get your room key from Pegram when your dorm is Alspa. That would be silly." And sometimes you just tweeted pure emotion. "I'm here," 2 exclamation points. "I can taste the freedom. I don't know if I should twerk or cry or laugh or scream." And maybe in response, one of your parents tweeted, "I hope my baby has a great time at Duke this year. Hopefully you can stay out of trouble." And finally, and this is really geared more towards the parents, the parent of a child who moved in last year tweeted just a day or two ago, "Parents, whether your child got a palatial suite or the tiny single in Hobbit Hall, have no fear, it's going to be a great year." Now, I just want to point out, this same parent last year tweeted, "My daughter has been given this horrible little room that doesn't even have a closet. I want to cry." So local, far-flung, you bring to Duke this incredible range of experiences and some pretty impressive accomplishments. Among your classmates, you have a collector of antique paper money and coins, a championship race car driver, a nationally competitive rock climber, a young woman who has driven a horse-drawn carriage in downtown Grand Rapids, a chinchilla breeder, the co-founder of Sassafras, Louisiana, a nonprofit organization dedicated to coastal restoration in Louisiana, and the sponsor of the Nutria Rodeo. Now, later, you can Google Nutria Rodeo, but I suggest you do that after lunch. You include a World Championship Irish step dancer, one of the racing sausages for the Milwaukee Brewers baseball team, the chorizo to be precise, a young woman who helped with the spawning and release of over 100 million scallops in Nantucket Bay, the president and national champion of the National Reining Horse Association, and 2 of my favorites, the young woman who was the grand champion in the Google International Science Fair by designing a cloud-based neural network program that significantly already improves breast cancer diagnosis from the least invasive biopsies. Yeah. And finally, a young woman with a YouTube channel, Speed Stack Girl, whose cup stacking accomplishments have garnered her over 25 million views, and whose voice was sampled in a platinum-selling, Grammy-winning song by Skrillex. I knew you'd know, and I knew they wouldn't. Skrillex. Now, I can imagine some of you might wonder, after hearing all of this, whether we might have made a mistake in admitting you. We didn't. Some of you come here having had every opportunity. Others of you have made it with very little help and with even fewer resources. But what we saw in you, what we appreciated, what made the difference wasn't the exceptional. It was your perseverance. It was your thoughtfulness. It was your ability and your desire to be part of a community, and that you know how to use whatever gifts you've been given. We admitted you not because of what you did, but because of what you've shown us what you can do when given the opportunity. And we know that you will do wonderful things when given the exceptional opportunities that Duke will provide you. And personally, I think you'll be not just the most talented and the most engaged, but also the most fun class we've had here in quite a while. So, President Brodhead, I would say thank you, but you're really thanking yourselves in some way. President Brodhead, I am so pleased to present to you, to the faculty, and to the Duke community, a class that we will be especially proud to call our own, the Duke Class of 2017. Thank you.
I love the fact that Christoph Gutentag starts out this assembly. The treasure hunters in our admissions office spent all last year finding you, so of course he deserves a chance to gloat. Plus, it seems to me he sets a great tone for starting college. Official Duke could have been pompous, starchy, overbearing, intimidating. Instead, he was relaxed, unpretentious, friendly, and fun. That's a great message to learn about Duke. This is a place where highly talented individuals live together in a state of mutual appreciation and mutual enjoyment. Yes, you have come to a good place. But fun and friendliness aren't the only moods that this day should inspire. Did you actually look up at this sublimely beautiful building soaring over you? Did you actually feel the floor of Duke Chapel vibrate when the organ played as you come in? Did you actually fix your eyes on your president, regally attired and so obviously equipped with supernatural powers? Do you doubt that I could do that again? Our welcome is genuine, but I hope you feel some awe about what is about to begin here. Today you make a fresh start in an altogether new life. This will be the first chapter of your life that began by visualizing you as an adult, no longer a child. And today you enter a life in which you have one and only one mission: to become the person you have it in you to be, a person equipped for leading a life of the highest personal fulfillment and a life that will give the greatest benefit of your gifts to your world. So how are you going to perform that exalted task? Let me share a thought I gathered from one of Duke's great teachers. Last fall, Duke was delighted to learn that our longtime colleague and faculty member, Robert Lefkowitz, had won the Nobel Prize in Chemistry. He was honored for something called, I presume you know all about this, the G-protein coupled receptor, the mechanism on cells that detects a chemical change in the environment and then produces a corresponding change inside the cell. For the layman, you see a bear, your body secretes adrenaline, the adrenaline molecules fit like a key into the receptor, they unlock it, they enter the cell, and all of a sudden your heart is racing. Dr. Lefkowitz's discovery of the mechanism of receptors is the underlying thing that makes possible the operation of about half of the drugs in modern use in the world, including beta blockers and antihistamines, only the most famous, so this is a pretty big deal. I got to interview Dr. Lefkowitz last year. He is another very funny and unpretentious person. And I asked him, what can a teacher actually do for a student? And he said, I try to get them to reach the point where they feel absolutely absorbed in the inquiry they're involved in. Once they felt a taste of that, they're never going to willingly give it up. And then he added, it's like when President Kennedy used to quote the ancient Greek definition of happiness: the full use of your powers along lines of excellence. You know, I hope, what he was talking about. Does this sound familiar? You were doing something that started as homework. You were doing a task set by someone else. You were doing it to please someone else. When all of a sudden you became engaged with the question, you were hooked, you began to be propelled by your own curiosity and not someone else's orders, moving to pull things together you already knew in order to help you understand the thing you didn't yet know. This doesn't only happen in academic work. Great coaches are people who can help players find how to release their power into excellent performance. That's the reason that athletics can have a place in a great university. Or you're in a musical group or a dance group or a debate team or an entrepreneur club, or you're tutoring at a program in a local school. You're doing what you think is expected of you, but then some internal switch gets thrown, and now it's you playing or teaching or performing. Now you're living inside the activity, and now you're reaching levels you didn't know you had it in you to attain. Or, and isn't this the most familiar of experiences, you're talking to a friend, you're paddling around in the shallow water of casual conversation, when suddenly you're deeper in. Suddenly you're sharing something that matters. Suddenly you're helping each other inhabit unfamiliar points of view, and suddenly you're seeing together what neither of you could have seen on your own. President Kennedy, not all presidents, but I'll paraphrase ancient Greeks. I think this is a great habit. President Kennedy was paraphrasing Aristotle, and they both had it right. Here was Kennedy's quote: "Happiness is the full use of your power along lines of excellence." You know there's pleasure to be found in knocking off and lying about, but the height of pleasure comes through engagement, through the activation of your full powers. We want you to be happy at Duke, and so we need you to be engaged. But even more, engagement is actually the precondition for learning and growth. The things we do in an uninvested or half-hearted way leave no mark on us, even when we're very good at them. We do them, we forget them, it's as if they had never been. I know you have already forgot at least half of what you learned in high school. But the things that inspired your deep participation, those are the things that expand you and transform you and release a recognition of what you could be at best. Under the influence of Dr. Lefkowitz, who's hanging out somewhere here this morning, I am visualizing Duke as a giant organism pumping out thousands of stimuli at you, things that could wake you up, things that could shock you into responsiveness, things that could call forward your powers of aspiration or curiosity or creativity or concern. These stimuli are partly academic, but they're not exclusively so, Everything you do here, every class you take, every activity you join, every conversation at a place so rich in intelligence and inventiveness, all of them could be a chance for self-expansion and self-discovery. But just being at Duke won't guarantee your enlargement. If you insulate yourself, if you hold yourself back or shut yourself in from Duke's provocations, your Duke could be a land of missed opportunities. To receive what Duke can give you, you need to be a receptor. You need to be actively engaged in opening yourself to the transforming opportunities that will now surround you. So if you face a choice someday between hanging back or leaning in, I want you to remember what your awesome president told you. Receive, connect, engage. And if I could give you one other tip, it would be please engage broadly. Reach far outside the boundaries of anything you've done up until this point. Duke students have always done so well in high school that when you come to college, there's a terrible temptation to constrain yourself to do things that only the things you're already known to be really good at in order to keep up the image of the perfect you. Taken to extreme, this could lead you to decide now what you're going to do for the whole rest of your life, a restriction parents can sometimes be guilty of abetting. But smart people almost never stick to scripts they composed in their mid-teens. More often, they only begin to find out who they are and what they're called to do while they're in college, and sometimes, in fact, even later. Dr. Lefkowitz was a dutiful son, and so he became a doctor, but only later did he discover that his real calling was to research. My new best friend, Stephen Colbert, went to college. He is, you know. My new best friend, Stephen Colbert, when he went to college, he was a would-be philosophy major named Stephen Colbert. It was only in college that he discovered the love of theater and performance that opened the way for his later career. People are always telling you to follow your passion. But frankly, you're a little young to be expected to know what passion ought to direct the whole rest of your life. So I loved it when I heard a variant on this saying, not follow your passion, but give your passion a chance to find you. That's what college is. Your horizons are about to be thrown wide open to possibilities intellectual, social, global, local, that you never dreamed of before. So why are you going to want to stay trapped in the smaller world you used to inhabit? You need to step out. You need to step up. You need to give Duke the chance to help you find out what it is you could be. Friends, you come to college in the midst, nationally, of a rather sour-toned debate about the value of education, in which many people have been claiming that college costs are out of control, learning could be delivered as well or better and far cheaper if it were all done online, and that the measure of education is whether you get a well-paid job on the day you graduate. I don't minimize the cost issue, and if your parents expect you to support yourself someday, they are in fact right. But though the media has pretty much confined its coverage to repeating the college bashing line, in fact there is another possible view in this debate, and here it is. This would be the view that the value of education is different from the cost. That a valuable education equips you for your whole life, not just your first day on your first job. And that while a valuable education can be assisted by technology, it's fundamentally delivered through human interaction, teachers and students, students and students, unlocking each other's potential through living face-to-face exchange. When you chose Duke, you and your family put your bet on this second value proposition. You know what? You made the right choice, and today this is just what awaits you. The chance to build your whole person through personal interactions in a living, lively, learning community. But to realize this value, you have to do more than pay the price. To get the value of Duke, you have to give yourself to it. You have to throw yourself into every chance here to learn and to grow. Now I'm looking hard at you. Are you prepared to do this? I couldn't hear you. Are you prepared to do this? Oh, come on. Are you prepared to do this? Awesome. By the powers vested in me, I hereby proclaim you students of Duke University. Congratulations. You may have noticed the astonishing absence of parents from Duke Chapel. That's because we have confined them to a parental holding zone in a near building where they are watching this ceremony by video. But I'll say a word to parents. Hello there. After this ceremony is over, we invite you to be reunited with your son and daughter and to join all of us outside this chapel for a picnic. I'll be there, my wife will be there, all the other speakers will be there. Please come find us, introduce yourself. We will be delighted to know you. Let me now quickly introduce some university leaders and people who will be responsible for your education, and I'd ask you not to applaud until I'm done. Maybe I would ask them quickly to stand. The Chief Academic Officer of this university is Provost Peter Lang. The Executive Vice President, the person who manages the place and the money of the place, is Dr. Tallman Trask. The Dean of Arts and Sciences is Professor Lori Patton. The Dean of the Pratt School of Engineering, Professor Tom Katsouleas. The Dean of the Nicholas School of the Environment, Professor Bill Chamides. The Dean, brand new right now, of the Sanford School of Public Policy, Professor Kelly Brownell. And the Vice President for Student Affairs, Dr. Larry Mineta. It's now my pleasure to turn to another of these figures, a great biologist, a great teacher, a great lover of students, Steve Nowicki, the Dean and Vice President of Undergraduate Education. Steve.
Thank you, President Brodhead. And let me add my welcome to you, Duke's class of 2017. I've already had the pleasure of meeting some of you in person, beginning with Natalie, who's out there somewhere, who I met back in April in West Palm Beach, and followed just a week later by Luke and Caroline, who I met in a delightful dinner in Cincinnati. And then I went to New York, and I met a bunch of people up there, and I met more students across the summer in places like Washington, D.C., and all around the country. And now, in those early days, I had to go to where you were to meet you, to make your acquaintance. But now, happily, you've all come to my home, so I don't have to rack up those frequent flyer miles. Where I live is now where you live. As the Spanish phrase goes, mi casa, su casa. Or perhaps I could say, mi universidad, su universidad. In whatever language, it's really great to have you here at last. Now, as I've pondered what I might say to you on this, the threshold of your Duke education, an image comes to my mind that might seem a bit odd at first, but hear me out. That image is of oysters. Yes, you heard me right, oysters. As I look at you, Duke's class of 2017, I'm thinking oysters. Follow me with this. Now, when you think of oysters, some of you might think of a tasty treat that you might eat with a little cocktail sauce. The biologists among you might be thinking about the fantastic diversity of bivalves found in the molluscan order Ostrioida. Still others of you might simply think that oysters are things you don't want to walk on in your bare feet on the beach because they're kind of nasty on the outside. Oysters are indeed nasty on the outside, and for some of us at least, a real delicacy on the inside. But that's not why I'm thinking about oysters at the moment. Rather, when I see an oyster, I see the potential for a pearl to be formed inside of it. And when I look at you right now, class of 2017, I see just over 1,700 pearls waiting to be formed. I don't know how much you know about oysters, but I want to tell you just a few things about them. The first thing I need to tell you is that not all kinds of oysters actually produce pearls. This fact isn't particularly essential to my point right now, but I want to get it out there so that those of you who are marine biologists don't send me tweets correcting my taxonomy. Let's just imagine that the kinds of oysters that can't form pearls didn't get into Duke. The second fact is more relevant, and it's this. Of those oysters that can form pearls, not all do. The so-called pearl oysters all have the potential to form a pearl, but that potential is only realized by some oysters and not by others. And this fact brings me to my point, which is to ask you to think about the difference. Why do some oysters form a pearl while others do not? The answer is simple. Those oysters that form pearls do so because they're uncomfortable. Not too uncomfortable, just a little uncomfortable. You've probably heard this. An oyster forms a pearl when a grain of sand becomes lodged inside its shell. An oyster, that grain of sand irritates the oyster. It makes the oyster just a little uncomfortable. Now, of course, the oyster has no way to get rid of that grain of sand, so what it does is cover the sand with layer upon layer of a remarkable substance called nacre, preventing it from further irritating the oyster. The nacre forms a smooth capsule around the sand grain. It's that smooth capsule that's made of layers of this remarkable substance, nacre, that is what we call a pearl. Pearls also happen to be beautiful, which is why they've been prized by people as valuable gemstones since ancient times. It's the layers of nacre that make a pearl a thing of beauty, because nacre interacts with light in a particular way that makes the pearl's surface both lustrous and iridescent. The physics of this has to do with how the layers of nacre refract light rays. Light falling on the surface is reflected back with subtle patterns of color and sheen that shift depending on how the light is falling and depending on how you look at it. It's this subtle, shifting reflection that makes a pearl a thing of great beauty. And this all comes about because a grain of sand made an oyster just a little uncomfortable. Perhaps it's becoming clear to you where I'm going with this. Every oyster can form a pearl, but only those that become a little uncomfortable actually do so. So too with you. As I look out at you, Duke's class of 2017, I see enormous potential, but it's still only potential. Realizing that potential is yet to come. Dean Gutentag has just extolled your virtues and told us what a fabulous group you are, and correctly so. That's why you were chosen to be here today. But as much as you've accomplished to get here, you've only just begun. Why aren't you called Duke's class of 2013? After all, it was in this year that you were chosen to be here and assembled as a group as our newest class. It's 2013. Why not index your identity by the year you arrived at Duke instead of the year that you leave? The reason is that you still have to realize your potential. Our shared task for the next 4 years is to help you realize this potential to its fullest, each as an individual and collectively as the class of 2017. And that brings me back to oysters. Just as it's the irritation of a grain of sand that unlocks the potential for an oyster to make a pearl, I suggest to you that the best thing you can do in your time at Duke is to allow yourself, to ask yourself, to be a little uncomfortable along the way. Not too uncomfortable. I'm not asking you to make yourself miserable, and we want you to be happy in the way first described by Aristotle, then by President Kennedy, and most recently by the awesome President Brodhead with his magical powers. I can't do that, by the way. Watch. See? It's magic. But I am asking you to get out of your comfort zone, as all of us are saying, to get a little uncomfortable, because doing so will help you unlock your potential and, like the oyster, form your own pearl. Now, I do know that you're not really oysters, so let me drop that analogy for a moment and tell you as students why I'm asking you to be a little uncomfortable, and you're going to hear this time and again through the 4 years here at Duke. It's totally human to want to be comfortable. We're programmed to seek comfort. It's the most natural thing for us to do, and if we don't think about it, we will always act in a way that keeps us comfortable. So then why should I ask you to make yourself a little uncomfortable? Because I want you to think about being uncomfortable. Now, this is because also, being comfortable, what that really means is sticking with the familiar. We find comfort in things that already fit us, like a comfortable old pair of shoes. We find comfort in things we know we enjoy, like what we call comfort foods. We find comfort in things we already understand, like a book we've read a dozen times or a movie we've watched over and over and would love to watch again. We find comfort in people who are like us, our family, our dearest old friends. There's nothing wrong with this. As I said, it's human nature to seek comfort, and I'm certainly not suggesting you should abandon all that's familiar and comforting to you now that you're at Duke. But if you only try out things that suit you, you miss the chance of finding new dimensions to yourself, and thus the opportunity to understand who you really are. If you only seek out ideas that are familiar and perspectives you already understand and know you agree with, you lose the chance of encountering ideas that could transform and, more importantly, clarify the way you think. If you only make friends who already seem familiar because they're so much like you, you might miss the chance to meet that one person who could change your life, even though that person is as different from you as night is from day. You could spend the next 4 years here being very comfortable. There are about 1,700 of you who just joined us at Duke, not to mention the 5,000 sophomores, juniors, and seniors who are going to be here in a couple of days. Surely, among that crowd, there are dozens and dozens of people who are just like with you and with whom you could spend all of your time comfortably. There are almost 2,000 classes taught every semester at Duke. Surely you could find classes here to fill out your curriculum in a way that you know fit your current interests and keep you going in the direction you already have decided you want to go. There are over 400 clubs and other student organizations here. Surely you could find more than enough groups to join that fit the way you already think, that do the things you already know how to do. On the other hand, if you allow yourself to become just a little uncomfortable by trying new things that you're not sure you're like, by exploring new ideas you're not sure you understand or agree with, by seeking out people who are different from you, who think differently from you, these are the grains of sand that, if you allow them to make yourself a little uncomfortable, will help bring out your full potential and help you form your pearl. Let me go back just for a second to how oysters make pearls, because although I know that what I'm asking you to do is, of course, different in detail, I really do know that you're not mollusks. There's another part of this analogy I'd ask you to consider. You see, this stuff called nacre that I mentioned earlier, which is the stuff that's layered around the sand grain to make a pearl, it's an interesting substance in its own right. It's made by combining two things. One of those things is just calcium carbonate to be precise, the stuff that chalky rocks are made out of, which the oyster draws from its aquatic environment. The other thing is a mixture of biological molecules, organic polymers, as the scientists would call them, that the oyster makes itself. Neither substance on its own is beautiful. The calcium carbonate would look like chalk dust, and the biological polymers would look like, well, like snot. It's only the careful combination of these two in a finely filigreed and layered pattern that results in the lustrous irradiance that makes pearls so beautiful and so valuable. Now, the reason I give you this added oyster fact is that, like President Brodhead, like all of us, I'm often asked, what is the real value of being at a university like Duke? Why not just get a high-speed internet connection, as President Brodhead suggested, or even just a good smartphone? It's easier, faster, it's a cheaper way to find out pretty much anything you need to know, from nuclear physics to economic policy to Aristotelian philosophy to contemporary criticism of Shakespeare. It is true that much, if not all, of the information you'll acquire during your time at Duke could be had without ever having set foot on this campus. But this misses the point. Information is not knowledge, and it certainly is not wisdom. You didn't come to college simply to acquire a bunch of information. That would be like the oyster coating a sand grain with only the calcium that it draws from its environment. This wouldn't give comfort to the oyster, nor would it form a pearl. It would just make a bigger stone. Remember that nacre that forms a pearl is a combination of the material drawn from the environment and substances the oyster itself contributes to hold it all together in finely layered patterns, accumulated over time. And here's the point of this added elaboration of my oyster analogy. It isn't enough just to learn stuff. That you could do with a smartphone without ever even changing out of your pajamas. Instead, you need to work with the stuff you learn. You need to contribute to it. You need to modify it. You need to bind it all together. You need to add your own substance to transform information into knowledge and knowledge into wisdom. Just like the oyster has to add its own substance to the material it draws from the environment to make a pearl. And this is the value of you being at Duke, here, right now, in the company of others who are in myriad ways each seeking to form their own pearl. It's only through this community of collective interchange, shared experience, the community that you find here at Duke, that you'll be able to create and contribute your own substance, and in so doing, produce the nacre of your wisdom, the pearl of your education. I end with this thought. Because the finest quality pearls are prized as objects of beauty, the word pearl has become a metaphor for anything that's very rare, fine, admirable, and valuable. This metaphor applies to each and every one of you, class of 2017. We look forward to watching your luster grow over the next 4 years, and I welcome you to Duke. Thank you. Still doesn't work. It's now my privilege to introduce you to several student leaders, fellow students who will play a very important role in your success throughout the year. Let me first introduce the co-chairs of the first-year advisory council program. Valentine Esposito is a senior from St. James, New York. Please stand, Valentine. Thank you. Valentine is majoring in evolutionary anthropology with a minor in biology. Derek Lindsay, please stand, Derek, is a senior from Grand Forks, North Dakota. Got one from North Dakota. Thank you very much for that. Derek is an economics major. The facts, as we call them, are those people who enthusiastically unloaded your cars and carried the tons of stuff you brought with you up to your rooms yesterday. But more importantly, they're going to continue to help you in oh so many ways across your first year at Duke. Figure out this place and get oriented. Thank you very much. Let me next introduce Dominique Brodhead. Dominique is the chair of the Honor Council. The Honor Council is a group of undergraduates who work with faculty and staff to promote honor, integrity, and ethical behavior in our university's life, as embodied in Duke's Code of Conduct, our community standard. Dominique is a junior from Concord, North Carolina. She's majoring in public policy studies with a certificate in philosophy, politics, and economics. Thank you, Dominique. And finally, I take great pleasure in introducing you to Stephanie Jones, President of Duke Student Government. Stephanie is a senior from Scottsdale, Arizona. She's majoring in political science with a concentration in international relations. And now I invite Stephanie to say a few words to you.
Hello, Duke class of 2017. You're probably all used to being told how incredible you are by now. You're brilliant, talented, the top of your class, and everyone gives you that bright-eyed wow when you tell them you're going to Duke. But I want to speak from some personal experience. So coming to Duke brought with it, at least for me, a heavy dose of intimidation. I had this nagging feeling that I didn't belong, that I didn't measure up to my peers. I left my freshman convocation feeling like a fraud. Why on earth did they choose me to be a part of this class? I've never written a book, or started an NGO, or done anything to help cure breast cancer. It probably didn't help, too, that I was sitting next to Kyrie Irving. And to add to my inferiority complex, I felt like I was harboring a deep secret. I got into Duke off the wait list. I was doomed to be a dull light in a class of shining stars. After all, I was among the last to be selected. I spent a good portion of my freshman year just skating by, not being too involved, not trying too many new things. If I never did newspaper in high school, there's no way I could write for the Chronicle. If I'd never been in a play, there's no way I could try out for Hoof and Horn. I didn't run for DSG, and I stayed well within my comfort zone. So why am I telling you this? Why am I telling you that Duke is a scary place full of scary people that are better and more qualified than you? Because it isn't. You belong here at Duke, and Duke wants you here for a reason. The minute I stopped letting my insecurities dictate my actions and started following my own lead, this place felt like home. Your comfort zone can be as big as you want it to be, as long as you dive right into life at Duke. The task can be a bit daunting, but like Dean Nowicki said, growth never comes without making yourself feel a little bit uncomfortable. I wanted to leave you with some more words of wisdom, so when writing the rest of my speech, I did what any good American would do. I outsourced it. I got on Twitter and I wrote, "Speaking to #Duke2017 next week. What's something you wish you'd been told as a college freshman? I got dozens of responses, mostly from nostalgic recent grads who would do anything to be in your shoes again right now. So let me tell you a few words of the Twitter world's advice, although I know you'll be getting a lot of it in the next few weeks. Jump right into Duke and don't let anything hold you back. Take classes you've never heard of, join groups you weren't a part of in high school, and don't worry, the graduation requirements will fall into place later. Run for DSG, tent for the UNC game, embrace Wednesday night jazz at the Whit Mary Lou, and explore Durham. Take service learning courses, eat pancakes from Pitchfork Provisions at 3 a.m. Seriously. Talk in class even if you know nothing. Go abroad, especially to places that make your parents slightly anxious, and apply for Duke Engage. And don't forget, last but not least, you're going to be just fine. With still a year left until I graduate, I can already say that coming to Duke has been the best decision I've ever made. Remember though, don't be afraid to take advantage of an opportunity because you think you are underqualified. I let go of that fear eventually, but you can do it right now. The opportunities at this university are endless, and there's no better time to start seizing them than the very first week of your freshman year. So congratulations, class of 2017, and welcome to the best 4 years of your life. Thanks. I would now like to introduce Elizabeth Wiley, who will perform for us the Duke alma mater. Liz is a senior from Glastonbury, Connecticut, with a major in biology and a minor in linguistics. She is a member of the Duke Chorale.
As you near the conclusion of your first official gathering as undergraduate students of Duke University, I ask you to join me in a time-honored tradition, the singing of the alma mater. Dear Old Duke, as it is now popularly known, was composed by Robert Henry James, a member of the Trinity College class of 1924. He said he was inspired to write a song that would show his gratitude and devotion to his university. I hope that the words of the alma mater will ring true for you not only during your years at Duke, but throughout your lives, and that your time at this place will inspire you ever to turn indeed to dear Old Duke. Please stand as I sing the alma mater through once, and then I invite you to join me in singing it. Welcome to Duke.